Good evening, good evening, and welcome to Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where health is wealth. True health is wealth. So, as always, we're going to go around the table really quickly, and we're going to introduce our great group of professionals that we have here with us on this evening. I'm going to start with my very own. As you can see, I'm still at work. I'm just in another area of my office. So we're going to definitely let's start with my coworker, Dr. Douglas Graham. Dr. Graham, can you introduce yourself, please?
Good evening, everyone. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here. I'm a retired physician. I worked in the Chicago area for many years. A year and a half ago, I joined the representative in his office. I'm going to try and answer your questions if I can.
Sure, absolutely fantastic. We're going to move on to the man who says I threaten him to be here every Monday night, and that's our very own Dr. James Miller. Dr. Miller, if you can introduce yourself to everyone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. James Miller. I am a physician in internal medicine. I've retired from clinical practice, but I still try to heal the community. And I enjoy being on this panel and discussing health issues and talking about things that are going to help to heal the community. So we hope that we'll be able to answer questions and to give you the information that's going to make you healthier.
Simply fantastic. I want to say hi to Yolanda Williams, who's here with us. Also, hi to Linda Johnson, who is here with us. And to the president of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation, Carrie Steele, who is here with us also. The doctor who keeps it 100, who everyone says is that Dr. 100, that's our very own Dr. Maya Green. Dr. Maya Green, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone here?
Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Maya. I'm very thankful for this time where we learn and share with the community. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Congressman Danny Davis, for creating this space. And thank you to all my fellow colleagues who I learn from every Monday.
Absolutely fantastic. Yolanda Williams says, Dr. Pete, I love that hat. Dr. Pete, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone, the man who is that proficient cook, and he will then bring our congressman to us, the congressman of the Illinois 7th Congressional District. Go right ahead, Dr. Pete.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, and had to switch it up, spice it up a little bit, and put the hat on. Actually, I just need a haircut. That's what it really is. That's when you pull out the hats, right?
And the only thing you had available was a black and gold hat, huh?
It's
only
always
one,
nearby.
huh?
It's always Maya. You're you know what? You know me too well. I'm happy to be here for the community, see what we can do to advance some health information so we can take better care of ourselves. And it is an honor for me to be a part of such a distinguished panel that the one and only Congressman Danny Davis, who has been fighting for the community and continues to fight for the community, as we are trying to get stuff passed through Congress, and we appreciate his hard work. But now we're going to bring on our esteemed congressman to help bring us in.
Well, let me just thank all of you for being engaged, involved, and participating. You know, the thing that I met with several groups of physicians in the last few days, and I guess the very interesting part of it is that no matter what it is that we are doing or think we're doing, there's always a bit of a crisis in healthcare. I'm saying I've never been involved in any discussion yet where people have said, you know, we got enough healthcare. And you know, we got everything that we need in terms of healthcare. I have not been privileged to be a part of any of those discussions. And no matter how many, of course, we're saddened a little bit to know that Dr. Mason has a bit of a health challenge right now. And of course, we pray for him and wish him well and trust that he's going to be fine. We certainly hope so. And of course, we have experienced the loss of some very distinguished Americans, some of whom we know and have had the opportunity to personally be engaged with Professor Timur Black, who is, I always say, Tim was the first real activist that I've ever known.
Mm.
Tim was a school teacher at Farragut High School. He was an activist then. He left Farragut and became a professor at Luke Junior College, and he has professed all over America. He's written several books. The funny thing about Tim is that when I first met him, he would run in a meeting. It was in the 60s, and people would be meeting, and he'd say, I know you all been meeting. Said, but I'm late. But let me just say a couple of things. And you forgive me, I know everybody got something to say. He said, but let me say what I got to say, and then because I'm on my way to another meeting. And I just want to leave this with you. And Tim did that. I've known him for more than 50 years, actually close to 60, as an engaged scholar, activist, political analyst, social analyst. He's written several books, every kind of meeting that you can imagine he was in. And so certainly our condolences go out to his wife, Zenobia, and members of his family. Of course, Colin Powell passed away, one of the most distinguished international public figures that I've known of, had the chance to meet, interact with, shake hands with, and be mesmerized by his leadership and his abilities to transcend and get along with all kind of different population groups. A great general, tremendous diplomat, and he died of complications with COVID, even though he had been vaccinated, had the vaccinations and everything. So it just means that you never really know, and that life is so precious that every minute of it should be used to the hilt. So we just paused for a moment to pay tribute to these distinguished Americans and compliment them for what they have meant. That opens us up to whatever the evening produces. I want to thank all the people who've tuned in and who are listening and have questions. And I'm sure this distinguished panel of scientists will be able to answer them. And if they don't answer them, they'll certainly comment on you get some direction. So Nicole.
Yeah. So Congressman Davis, if you don't mind, I'd like to start off by providing some background to our distinguished Secretary of State, Colin Powell. Well, one is that he also had multiple myeloma. He was battling that. And then if we could have one of our panelists just give us a brief description of what multiple myeloma is so that the audience can gain some perspective around, because what I don't want people to say is, because a lot of the non-vaxxers will say, you see, he got vaccinated and it didn't work. And so we just need to let's start off by defining what multiple myeloma is. Anybody want to take that? Maya, Doug, or James?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Actually, my father had myeloma, had multiple myelomas, and multiple myeloma is a malignancy, or the public will probably term it a cancer of the bone marrow, and it's the type of cancer where there's certain elements, a certain type of cellular elements of the bone marrow produce uh, out of proportion to what it should be producing, and therefore these the material and the cells that are produced create proteins that cause damage to various other organ systems, and so this is so when we've always talked about the fact that people that are at risk. So a person with a malignancy, myeloma, or other kinds of cancerous growth are at increased risk of succumbing to COVID, even though they may have the protection of the vaccine. And so that would obviously be a case, would be part of his issue, would be the presence of multiple myeloma. It creates another additional risk factors for him.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd just like to add what Dr. Miller said. Part of the problem with this is that these abnormal cells crowd out the healthy cells. So you really can't have a natural response to any kind of vaccination. The other really serious problem is multiple myeloma is treated with very aggressive chemotherapy. And that also knocks down your immune system. So it's kind of like you've got a triple hit. Yeah. And he might be one of those people who, in spite of being vaccinated, was never able to mount an antibody response. Yeah. And doesn't have the other normal components of the immune system to fight it off. So he's really got multiple risk factors for this disease, and was really somebody who needed the vaccination and the booster as well.
Maya, I heard you were like going to say something.
You muted.
Yes, I was gonna. They said everything I was gonna say. Number one, multiple myeloma is a cancerous infection of part of the cells that make up your immune system. So, as Dr. Miller said, they're growing out of control, but they're also dysfunctional while they're growing. So it's not like, oh, great, you get more of these. It's like, because it's busy growing, it's not actually putting together the sequence to actually accomplish what that cell is supposed to do. So A, they're dysfunctional, the cells that are growing. B, the treatment, like Dr. Graham said, to deal with these dysfunctional cells weakens the immune system, right? And so going back to our vulnerable populations are included in people who are at higher risk for poor outcomes if they get coronavirus or COVID-19, people with who are immunocompromised, right? Yeah. He would fall in that category, right? Like Dr. Graham said, you may not mount a strong response, and he was 84. So when you look at the people that that unfortunately succumb at a more increased rate to COVID-19, he had a dysfunctional immune system on immune drugs that further weakened that immune system, and was above 65, was 84. So when you put all those things together, this is where COVID-19 likes to go to do most of his damage. Now, when you look at what options we have to help people in that situation, create herd immunity, meaning the more people around him that were vaccinated, the lower his chances of COVID-19 getting his body and impacting him. So going back to that mask wearing, going back to that physical distancing, going back to trying to achieve that herd immunity, meaning what is it now? It used to be 70. Now they're looking in the 80s.
Yeah.
Percent of the people around you in your community have to be vaccinated to the point where they develop, meaning they receive that complete series. For him, the series, depending on what the vaccine he got, would have been a 3-dose, right? Because remember, they recommended additional doses for people who were immunocompromised. Why? Because, like Dr. Graham said, the fact that he was immunocompromised meant that the first 2 doses, and a lot of people who are immunocompromised doesn't get them to that protection level, you know? All right. So those are the things kind of we know.
Yeah.
So we can't just, it always is interesting what we need for our community. A community that has been given half the information is to give all the information.
Yeah.
So like Dr. P said, we can't just say, oh, Colin Powell was vaccinated and he died of. No, Colin Powell was vaccinated with at least 2 doses. He needed his additional dose.
Yeah.
And he did not yet get that additional dose, was working to it,
Yeah.
it looks like had it scheduled, but did not make it to the additionals, and his immune system was dually compromised, A, by the dysfunctional cells, B, by the treatment, and he was 84. And we have to tell the whole story. What can we do to protect people who are in his situation and still on this side?
Yes.
What we can do is get vaccinated.
Right. Yeah. And I think this is kind of the thing that burns me up when I hear people say, well, if you're vaccinated, why do you care if I'm vaccinated? And this is a prime example that we have to protect the most vulnerable part of our population. It's not just because I'm vaccinated, I should be happy and leave me alone, whoever you might be who is not vaccinated, because and I'm not saying that, that General Powell got infected by somebody who wasn't vaccinated. I'm just simply saying that by getting as many people vaccinated as possible, like Dr. Maya said, trying to achieve that herd immunity at 80% of the population, I think the last numbers is we still have 65 million people who are not vaccinated. And while that's 2/3 of the population, that's a third, but we still have another third to get vaccinated. And that is to protect that vulnerable part of the population. And that's something that we can do. We can do it. We just got to care about each other and make a decision. We have a lot of questions to get through, so let's just get right at it, and hopefully we can get through as many as possible. Our first question is, why is it sometimes that your hemoglobin is rising too high while on dialysis, and the healthcare providers do not return all of your blood and give you saline fluids in its place? Can this be dangerous? And is there anything you can do to stop this from happening? So people that are getting dialysis, it sounds like she's saying, why is it that your hemoglobin can go too high while on dialysis and the healthcare providers do not return all of your blood, and instead they give you saline fluids in this replacement? Can this be dangerous? I can start. So as you know, when you're getting dialysis, you're basically taking the place of what the kidney normally does, right? So you're purifying the blood, you're taking out all of the toxins. Now, while that happens, you're also removing fluid too. And so as a result of removing fluid, you can become what we call hemoconcentrated. And so your hemoglobin can go too high as a result, because you're like taking away all the liquid, if you will. And so you're left with too much. It's almost like, when you're making Kool-Aid, let's let Dr. Hampton know we're not talking about making Kool-Aid. We're using this as an example in case he's listening. But if you're making Kool-Aid and you don't put enough water in it and you have all the powder, that's too concentrated. So that would be the equivalent of your hemoglobin going too high. So what do you do as a result? You put more water in to dilute the powder, right? So it becomes less sugary, less concentrated. So that's the equivalent of what you might be referring to when you say adding the saline. Is it dangerous? Dialysis is not a easy, fun procedure. And I think, any dialysis patient can tell you that, they could go into dialysis and then, a couple of hours later be headed to the ER, because it is a strenuous process. And, you have fistulas that we put in your arm to run the dialysis through. So I mean, dialysis in general is a dangerous process. I don't know if anybody else want to take a stab at that.
Well, the only other thing that I'm thinking of is that also you spoke about the function of the kidney in terms of removing toxins from the blood. The kidney also produce another factor which has to do with you've developing red blood cells or preventing anemia, which is erythropoietin. And so that is also partially compromised when the kidney doesn't function properly. Right. And so oftentimes, most of the times, people that are on dialysis also will receive, injection of this product to help them form red blood cells and prevent the process of them being anemic. Because that's a common, people with chronic disease commonly become anemic. And so, so that's one of the factors that may contribute to the rising in your blood, and also what your diet is, how much iron is there for you to be able to manufacture the necessary red blood cells. So there are a lot of factors that has to do with you making hemoglobin and your hemoglobin rising. So in addition to, as Dr. Peach said, the the concentration of the blood, which make it looks that you have more blood than you actually have, because you have a large amount for the volume of fluid. And so by improving that fluid volume and getting rid of the dehydration that can exist, that is also a process that helps to improve the flow and the functionality, of your circulatory system. So there's a number of things that may be attributed to in terms of the rising of the hemoglobin, so it's as Dr. Pete said, we're dealing with sort of a delicate balancing situation. Yeah. Removing fluid, giving fluid, having the red blood cells to produce, and all those factors that's contributing to that can affect what we're seeing in terms of the numbers.
And just to give people some perspective, the exact opposite of that. So if you don't remove enough fluid, people can go into heart failure. People can become volume overloaded. So it really is a delicate process. And, you see, on the primary care end, we see patients who might, in general, there is a certain amount of fluid that's removed every time that they go to dialysis. And so if you're not taking enough, patients their heart can become overwhelmed and the lungs can fill up with fluid. If you take too much, they might become dehydrated and the hemoglobin goes too high. So that's that balance that Dr. Miller was talking about. And just take, for instance, if both of those processes are happening, let's say they take too much fluid and they're getting erythropoietin, right? So it might not be until the next time they get dialyzed that they realize that, the hemoglobin is 19. So that's higher than we wanted. So they have to stop the erythropoietin, which it stays in your system for a certain amount of time period. So that doesn't happen immediately. And they may have to give them more fluid in order to bring down the hemoglobin. So if we did that one, there's another question. Okay, here's a booster question. So with the booster vaccine, in parentheses, third dose, can you interchange the brands? Meaning, if your first dose was Johnson & Johnson, can you get a Moderna as a booster? And if so, do you need to take that brand maker's second dose as well? So this is asking about mixing of the booster versus the original dose.
So I'll take that one on, Dr. Pete. There's been one study now that's been released. It hasn't been shown to be true in other studies yet, and they're probably in the works, that if you have the Johnson & Johnson first, you get a spectacular response if you either get Pfizer or Moderna afterwards. So that's one study that I know of. I haven't seen any other studies yet that show Moderna, Pfizer, Moderna. So I don't think people are going to do Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, though. That would be my impression.
Right.
And they haven't studied the switching yet. So it's in the works. We just don't have the data yet.
Great. Okay.
I do want to clarify. like we talked about, General Colin Powell and people who have immunocompromised systems, an additional dose is not the same thing as a booster. Okay. I think we mentioned earlier, uh, he was due for his third dose or an additional dose. When someone has an immune compromised system, or the CDC has a list of them, some people need 3 doses, and that's their baseline. That's instead of a 2-dose vaccine, some people need 3 doses, meaning they got the 2 doses that everybody else got, and they got an additional dose. That's the definition of additional dose, to create a baseline immunity, right? And then the booster for Pfizer is going to be 6 months. So I got my baseline immunity, right? 6 months after my baseline immunity. If that means if I'm not immunocompromised, I got 2 doses. If I am immunocompromised, I got 3 doses, right? 6 months after that, I get a booster. A booster is like that tetanus booster. Okay. Additional doses I equate to when you get the HPV vaccine, or you get hepatitis B. All those doses you get all together when you're growing up, and it's part of a series. That's your original baseline. Then you get your booster. Pfizer 6 months after. It looks like Moderna is going to be 8 months after. Moderna isn't, the FDA, the ACIP made some recommendations. It's not all the way approved yet, but it looks like it's going to be 8 months after for the booster. So additional dose, the doses I need to create my baseline immunity. Booster is going to be, I got my baseline immunity. I'm going through life. Studies show that I need a little. For those of us that watch or used to play Sonic the Hedgehog, remember he was going by his business. Then he hit them coins. Boom! That's my booster. My little booster. Okay. So it's like, that's after additional dose. You started your race. You're going about your business. You need something to like jumpstart you again, put you on turbo. That's the booster. All right. Yeah, I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point you made, Dr. Meyer. I think people need to understand, and I think the other thing people need to know is that this stuff has to be done based off of data. This is not people's personal feeling. You cannot, that's not how medicine goes. We have to have the data to show that this works. Not because, it makes sense. Oh, well, why not just go? No, we have to have the data to show that this benefits the risk of it, because no matter what you say, there's always a risk. While it might be a small risk, it's still a risk. So we have to be able to justify that this procedure or this particular method is actually beneficial, right? Because if you're able to maintain immunity without the booster, well, then why do that? See, so it's only when we showed through the studies, and I think that goes back to this whole issue of listening to science and not just our sort of gut feeling, personal feelings, and things like that.
If Dr. Mason was here, he would say, this is the part where he would say, in God we trust, all others must bring data.
Must bring data. I love it.
Exactly.
I love it. Dr. Mason is here. He is here. Thank you, Maya, for bringing that out. Another question. So I believe my grandson was giving bad drugs. All illegal drugs are bad, but this took his mind. We had him hospitalized. They realized after days he thinks that he's a car, and when he walks, he makes car sounds. He keeps his hands up as if he's in a car. He makes accelerated sounds. He has stoplights. I'm in tears every time I see him. This is so bad on our family. He's only 19 years old. The hospital does nothing. Do you have any suggestions where we can send him for treatment?
Wow.
Anybody?
Well, I'll just say this. We've observed and read about many situations where, when we talk about drugs and even medication, there are always things that can occur that are outside of what is the usual. And so sometimes a person takes drugs, whether it was bad drugs or whether it was a high dose of the drug. We don't know. However, sometimes it just that certain individuals will have an unusual response to different drugs, and therefore the response may be physical, it may be emotionally or mentally affected. And these are the kinds of complications that are, as mom is saying, that is very disheartening, very difficult for the family to deal with, because now they have they have a child or a son that was seemingly normal, and now he behaves in ways that doesn't make sense to anybody in the environment. In terms of treatment, other than I guess psychiatric kind of evaluation, and figuring out what it is that is causing this compromise is the only thing that I can think of. I don't know of any kind of medications or drugs that you can do to change that behavior. I think it's a figuring out process, evaluating what's going on, because sometimes it's the experience that that individual had while under the influence that may have triggered something else. And we don't. So that's a difficult thing to figure out. But seeking psychiatric care, I think, would be the best approach.
Yeah, and I would say
Dr. Gregory.
also what probably needs to happen, and I'm not sure if this person has had a complete neurological workup. So what I mean is actually seeing a neurologist, getting a scan of the brain, maybe an MRI, to see what residual damage has happened to his brain. Um, that might be very helpful. I do know Rush has a great dementia center. They have a great dementia center, and I mean all dementia doesn't happen in old people, and so I would consider having an extensive neuropsych. So this would be just what Dr. Miller said, having a psychiatrist look at him, but also a person that's a neuropsychologist, a neuropsychiatrist that specializes in the brain plus these psychiatric disorders. So if he's developed, maybe I don't know. I'm not gonna sit here and play diagnose. So you definitely got to make sure you have a clinician look at him and make sure that he sees a neuropsychiatrist. Rush has a great program. Dr. Meyer, I know you were gonna say something.
Right now they got on the street some. If we're talking, I don't know if we're talking about marijuana. If we were talking about marijuana laced with LSD or PCP, that would align with what we're seeing in a lot of the emergency rooms. We know both LSD and PCP can cause what people are talking about, and sometimes some acid could cause what people are talking about, a bad trip. We also know that our brains aren't fully formed. Our brain function gets fully formed actually when we're 25. That's why they say adults are 18, but all of us can think back to the stuff we did in our early 20s and we were like, what? You know, because our brains aren't fully formed. So something that happens with two things, long-term marijuana use and adolescence, is it delays and sometimes can halt that brain maturity process. So a lot of times an adolescent that experiences marijuana use, 14, 15, they're 18 and they're still like some of the things that a 14-year-old would do, they're still involved in. Some of the thought processes have not yet matured because it will delay that. But also on top of that, we know that first use of things like LSD and PCP can put your brain in a spiral where it just kind of doesn't come out of it, and PCP specifically, we've seen cause a lot of the symptoms that like that were described in that question. Not to say that someone went out and did PCP. A lot of our marijuana is laced with a lot of stuff now on the streets, and we are seeing an increased rates of our youth presented to the emergency room and being hospitalized and having negative outcomes of especially street marijuana.
I guess the best psychiatric institutes and programs that one can find is the only and best hope, and do as much praying as you can.
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm gonna help you out a little bit, Pete. We've kind of gotten a little, we got a little tied down here, so we're controlling this area. I want to say hey to just a few people who have jumped in with us on today. I want to say hey to Mary Ballinger that's here, to Betty Phelps that is here, and her sister Alderman, um, the alderman who is here with us on today. I want to say hey to Edna Weatherspoon, to Nellie King, to Virginia Knight, who says, afternoon, evening, everyone, have a great day. It's a great day to be alive. Rosetta Guy, who is here with us, to Tamika Thomas, who's inviting tons of people to be here with us, and they are chiming on, and we want to say hey to all of those people that Tamika Thomas has asked to come on and be a part, to Shirley Howard, who is here, and she says hello to everyone as well. And Edna Weatherspoon says, thank you so much for this information. She says, thank you for the information. You know, our next question says, my heart goes out to Colin Powell, the former U.S. Secretary of State, and his family. I have two questions. One, what is the new variant of COVID-19? And two, while reading, I read the Delta and Epsilon variant of COVID-19 is fast spreaders for all, especially among the unvaccinated communities. In saying that, what is the real reason people will not get vaccinated? Interesting.
Yeah. So for some of the newer variants, the CDC has basically said that well, one, the Epsilon variant, it is gaining some profile, especially amongst the unvaccinated. However, right now it's just been proven in the lab, so it's not something that's something that's been found to be in the community. It's not very dominant in the United States. Dr. Fauci also mentioned that the mu variant is extremely low in the United States. It makes up about 0.5% of the U.S. infections. So it's not something that we should brush off, but we should keep our eye on it. But presently, it's not the variant that we should be concerned about. The variant we should be concerned about is the Delta variant, and amongst the Delta variant is very infectious, probably almost at the rate that the measles is. And if you know anything about the measles is very infectious. And so that's the one that we need to be very concerned about. And in terms of the unvaccinated, I think, like anything, when they say a little information is dangerous, right? Once you get somebody that has a little information and they think they know a lot of information, that's dangerous. Okay. So the bottom line is, people have personal beliefs, and we know traditionally that people's personal belief systems impact their health behavior. And so it's not an unknown health factor. We know this. When you study public health, you know that people can believe something, and with that belief system, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. They live their entire life through that belief system. So I think we have to, continue to listen. We can't blow people off. We can't tell people that they don't make sense. We have to listen and then tell people the truth. And even if the truth does not make sense to them now, over time, when we keep saying the same thing, it's not. Now, we should know this too. People say, well, that's not what you said before. Science changes. When we know more information, it changes. It's not like this is not static. I mean, Dr. Mason, again, we're going to mention Dr. Mason. He will tell you when he was in school, what they were doing for breast cancer, I mean, was very, a different kind of procedure than what I was doing when we was in med school, me and Maya, and then much different than what they're doing now. So the more that medicine advances, it changes. And so much like with this, when people say, well, that's not what he said before, and this, and this. So no, the bottom line is that we should listen to science, and we shouldn't blow people off when they have their personal belief systems. Listen to them and then tell them the truth.
Now, Dr. P, you know good and well I went to medical school after you because I'm younger. Don't do that. Don't do that. This kid, we was
I
in the
knew
same
about a
class.
year or two.
We were in some of the
I
same
don't quibble about
classes.
it.
We were in some of the same classes. That's how I met Dr. P. So
Right.
I was like,
I
you
don't quibble
know
about
what?
a couple of years.
You know,
Yeah,
to this age.
let me add this, Dr. Pete. Just as medicine evolved, diseases evolved.
Yes.
You know, when I was in med school, HIV was not around. Nobody knew anything about it, and nobody talked about it because it wasn't something that we knew that was occurring. And you know, I can remember the very first patient that I had that had I didn't know at that time that the patient had HIV. A patient came in with lymphadenopathy. And so, you know, we did the usual thing in terms of working up, and then eventually the patient ended up getting a node biopsy. And I can remember so vividly, the pathologist called me and says, I got this patient of yours, and I'm seeing something that I that's unusual and something I'm not certain what it really is. You know, and as we began to engage in, you know, my findings on physical examination and the whole bit. And you know, the strangest thing about it, he said, I've looked it up. I've been looking, you know, in all the journals, and I cannot find this.
Wow.
He said, and he said to me, it's strange. He said, you know, the only thing that I can find that looks like this is the George syndrome. He said, but this is an older lady. That you know, kids would not live that long. That we know they would have this problem. And so diseases evolve. So we began to, you know, so that these are the processes that we have in life. And so yeah, it has to change. It can't stay the same because we don't deal with the same problems as we go along in life.
And that's the same thing with the COVID, with
Yeah.
COVID-19, right? That's why we have all these variants. So and that's why the city, state, federal stuff will be like, hey, now we have to stay in. Now we can go out. Now we wear masks. Now because also like Dr. P and Dr. Miller said, medicine evolves, and as the COVID-19 virus evolves and moves into different variants, we'll see different guidelines. We may see different boosters, things like that. And one of the things that I want to say, I'm reading a book called Medical Apartheid, and quickly understanding that part of the medical apartheid that people experience is misinformation, but also, like Dr. Pete said, half information.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you a little bit of information is dangerous, you know, full transparency and knowledge is truth and freeing. Hi, Dr. McGee. It's nice to see you.
Well, you know, the congressman often says that you need to drink deep because shallow drinking intoxicates the brain. So he makes sure that you get all the information that you can possibly get so you can stay very aware of what's going on. Let me correct that. That's Betty Stelz and her sister, Alderman Emmerman. So I want to make sure that we let you guys know that the Alderman has chimed in just as well. To Judge David Kelly, who is here. Judge Kelly says, good evening to all from Judge David Kelly. You know, Mary Ballinger also wrote in her saying hello. She says, so do we know yet if COVID is transmitted by air or both by touch? This may have been covered, but unfortunately I have missed it. Pete, if you can give us a quick rundown, you or Dr. Maya or Dr. Green or Dr. Miller or Dr. Graham, if we can have a quick rundown of just how COVID is transmitted really quickly so we can move on to our next set of questions.
Yeah, it is respiratory, so that's one of the reasons why we have the mask. What we found was that the virus does not live very long on surfaces. So not that we, you know, discourage you from, you know, cleaning surfaces off. That's good and fine. But the best thing to do is the 3 W's, which is wear your mask, watch your distance, and wash your hands.
All right. You know, our next question says, the weather in Chicago is about to get blistery. What is in store for us this flu and cold season and the real monster, the COVID-19 pandemic? What can we do to stay healthy?
Mm.
What Dr.
Jackie,
Mason would say, he would definitely tell us to change our diets and to eat right. That would be the first thing out of his mouth.
well, I think Dr. P just answered it. Dr. P, I was not really. They sounded good. Can you? So the same things you just said also
Yeah.
address this question. What were those 3 W's?
Yeah, wear your mask, watch your distance, and wash your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and I don't know if if people are not aware of this, but last year, the year of the pandemic, we had the lowest cases of flu than we've ever had in the last 50 years. And we think that's because people were staying distant, they were wearing their masks, and they were very conscientious of where they put their hands, and they was washing their hands more frequently. So, these principles aren't like, really, I mean, they're not real rocket science stuff. It's just common behavior that we know works when we're trying to reduce infections. If you think about it, even when we're in the hospital and they're like severe hospital infections, what do we like the VRE, for instance, right? That's different than this, but it's vancomycin resistant enterococcus, but that's a contact virus. But still, I mean bacteria. But still, what are we doing? We're putting on a whole hazmat mask on, right? And not everybody can go into the room, right? So there's a specialized room where where it's just that particular team can go in there. So these are common mitigating strategies to reduce infections. And why is that important? Because we don't want the medical team that's taking care of the patient that has VRE to then come out of there and then walk into the patient room that does not have VRE, because that potentially puts you at risk. So, yeah. We have another question. But first, I just want to acknowledge my brother, Dr. McGee. You want to say hello to the audience?
Hello to everybody who's on the panel, and hello, audience. It's a pleasure to be here. I just got off work, so I'm still in scrub mode. So
it's all
I'm
good.
an ER doc, so
yeah.
And it's crazy, guys. Yeah, you're right. Last year we didn't. I don't think I had one flu case because we were doing all the right stuff. So I encourage everybody to do the same thing this year, but also still get your flu shot. You just never know.
Exactly.
Yep. And the cases are still horrendous. I don't know if you guys saw the recent graph, and they show the different peaks for COVID cases and death. And so for September, we had the highest peaks for youth, okay, getting cases and dying. And it's the common denominator is everybody went back to school.
Yeah.
So I encourage parents out there and everyone else to do what's best for you and your child. And if they're 12 and up, get their vaccine, but definitely make them wear their mask, whether or not the teacher or anybody else is wearing their mask. And actually, you try to get them a KN95 as well. Yeah.
All right. We have another question. So, what are your thoughts about Ron L. Hubbard Dianetics approach to mental health and psychosomatic illnesses that has been around since 1950s? Dr. Miller? It's the 1950s.
I'm not gonna step on that one, Peter. I'm not that familiar with Rondell.
Dr. Graham, you know anything about?
I know very little about it, but I guess my question is, there may be a time and a place for it when nothing else seems to be working. I'm still a big fan of trying those things that have been gone through clinical trials and tested and have a longer and a bigger track record.
What was it?
Maybe whoever asked the question might brief us a little bit about it.
Yeah, It's So, what are your thoughts about Ron L. Hubbard's Dianetics approach to mental health and psychosomatic illnesses that has been around since the 50s? So, I guess the panel's conclusion is that none of us are very abreast on Ron L. Hubbard's approach, and like Congressman said, it'd be nice to hear what they think about their approach to mental health.
I think Ronald Hubbard was the only thing I know. You're right, Dr. Pete. Isn't that the Church of Scientology?
Maybe I think so.
I believe it is. And then so I wouldn't necessarily. What I know about faith is what I think Dr. Graham may have already mentioned. There is a place for faith, in whatever source a person identifies with. There's a place for faith. There is a
Absolutely.
place for faith.
Yeah.
But I think also what Dr. Graham said is faith without works. You see what I'm saying? You still, come get this vaccine while you're getting that faith. Also, I want to also dovetail off of, I believe, what Dr. McGee was talking about, or Dr. Pete, getting a flu shot. You can get the flu shot and the vaccine together.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I used to have my patients would ask me about prayer, and I would always say, absolutely, let's pray, and then we're gonna pray and we're gonna take this blood pressure medicine. Okay, so and this is my personal belief with this is that the God I serve can do anything He wants, and including working through this medicine. Okay, or through chemo or through whatever. So I have had patients to stop their HIV medicines and stop going to chemo because they think they've, quote unquote, heard from God and all that stuff. To me, that was tragic because I know that they were getting better on the medicine. But again, I'm not faulting anybody for whatever they believe, but to Dr. Graham's point, we got to operate off of, there's a time and place for everything.
Yeah. I will say this, I think it's terrific to have a strong faith, but also have an understanding of how faith work and how God works. God works by through people, through beings. He deliver you, or He sends someone to help you be delivered. So we have to use those modalities. Those modalities are, so you should have enough faith to believe that God has put those modalities there for our good. And so,
come on now.
So when we start talking about the vaccine and people are saying, well, I'm just praying on it. I mean, so my question is, are you listening to? Are you just talking? Are you communicating?
Come on now.
You're not listening to what God said, then you have a problem. So it's a matter of communication. So I think that that yes, you should. I have a strong faith, but I also believe that that God gives to me directions, and He sends things and people into my life and into my space that is going to help me to do better and to be better. And so we have to use those things. I mean, we often hear the story of the man who was in the flood, and so the neighbor came, and he had a boat, and they said, "Come on, John, we got room," and he said, "No, I'm waiting on God. Y'all go ahead on." And so later on, the Coast Guard came, and they begging for him, and he said no, and then someone else came. And then he died, and he did go to heaven. And then he got to heaven, and he said, "St. Pete, I have one question." He said, "I've always believed in you, and according to Scripture, I heard that whatever I needed, all I had to do is ask you for it, and that you were going to deliver it to me." And said, "But in that flood, I prayed that you would come and get me out of it, but you didn't come." So what happened? He said, "Well, John, the neighbor was the first person I sent for you, and you turned them away." He said, "I'd send the Coast Guard. You turned him away." He said, "Everything that I sent for you to get you out, you turned it away. So I can't." He said, "So I send you help, but you don't take it, Doc. There's nothing I can do about that one. So we got to take the help also." And so we should have enough faith in it that we take the help that God sent us, and not think that something magic is going to happen, because there is no real magic that is for real.
Well, even the woman
that is the
didn't just
I'm
see
sorry,
the garment. She said, "Let me touch it."
Yeah.
We didn't just look at it.
There you go.
We did something.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Mary Ballinger said, again, I'm going to say all this information is priceless. This information is valuable as life itself. You're helping us help ourselves to be and stay healthy and safe. This goes for each of you that makes this broadcast possible and available to us. I might also add there's no charge for the sheer honesty. Bonnie Smedley says, I choose faith or fear for the vaccine. Mary Ballinger said, amen, Dr. Miller. You better say that. And Betty says, amen.
The bishop took us to church. I almost feel like we should pass that collection plate. I like that.
Right.
You just took us to church today. You took us to church. If you're vaccinated and you come in contact with someone who has COVID, do you need to quarantine?
So part of the question is, are you having symptoms? Because if you start to have symptoms, fevers, chills, headaches, muscle aches, I would think about it. And if you can, actually go to the drugstore and get a COVID test because they're not that expensive, and test yourself. And the reason to do that is if you're positive, you want to protect yourself and your community. You don't want to be going out there and hugging and kissing and being with people who might not be vaccinated, and then they'll have a bigger problem. Now, the other thing is if you're positive, you actually may want to talk to your doctor about that too. Because he may say, at a certain point in time, I may need to see you, or you may need to go somewhere else too.
Awesome answer. So you may not need to quarantine, but you definitely may need to go and just get tested. Know your status. Doug, I don't know if I'm hugging or kissing anybody anymore, and I'm gonna definitely have this mask on forever. All right, Dr. T, go right ahead.
Just another question was asking about. I'm not talking about legal weed. I'm just saying that weed that the kids, adults are getting a hold of on the streets is different. I watched several kids and adults, and they're making them not hungry and stuck, almost like they're doped up. Also, I understand that taking care of low-income people, and why did the government give so much extra link for little kids that don't eat that much? Why wasn't any relief for loans giving to homeowners during the COVID to assist? I wasn't behind on my mortgage, but I could use the assistance in getting my house fixed. We work hard, and it seems like the public assistance needs to get to more people than those people.
I'll answer the first question. So marijuana, we see a lot of synthetic marijuana coming to the ER because they have a bunch of symptoms that people are not used to seeing. Number one, they have all these different names for K2 spice. They make it, the packages very sexy and psychedelic with cartoons and all these different things. So it attracts the youth. And now the youth are actually using, e-pens and vaping, and they're smoking it right in front of parents or whomever who don't know what's in it sometimes. And that gives them, all these different mixed ingredients, and you don't know what the ingredients are. And sometimes they're synergistic in that they all come together and create a different product that can affect each and every person differently. And so a lot of times these kids get irritated. They can lose consciousness. They can have paranoia. They breathe fast. Their heart rate goes up. They can have seizures. They can have hallucinations, and they can have altered mental status, which sometimes they may or may not come back from the years they took. And a lot of times, you can't even trace it because the drugs don't even show up. So you don't even know what you're dealing with sometimes when they come into the ER. You hope that they get better with just letting them sleep it off. Sometimes you have to intubate them. You have to constantly season, and sometimes they die. So the biggest thing is stay away from vaping and E2 pens and all that stuff.
Second question, I'll take a shot. The way that we kind of come up with priorities in terms of deciding what help and what kind of help to provide. I think the committee that I serve on, one of them is pretty unique. There are 25 Democrats on there. And each one of us will talk about what we'd like to see become priority. We start in rank order. The first person is the person with the most seniority. Then we go to the next person with seniority, the next person with seniority, until we get finished with everybody on committee. And then, based upon what it is, we will decide. For example, the desire to assist children. Many people will agree and say children cannot help themselves. That
Yeah.
children have no control over their being. They didn't choose. They couldn't decide their environment. They didn't decide their parentage. They didn't decide anything.
Yeah.
And so they are the most helpless members of society. And so a decision, say to do the child tax credits, to do the earned income tax credits, to try and make pre-K education universal so that every child, no matter who he or she might be, a better way perhaps of saying it and a different way perhaps of saying it is that in the minds of many, help is designed for the needy and not the greedy and the most needy. And you really can't get any more in need than children who have no control at all over their being.
Yeah.
And so I think that goes a long way. And then there are other factors in terms of how people feel and that kind of thing. But I think that's sort of a basic. We can sometimes get agreement between Democrats and Republicans on a child issue or a children's issue, and we can't get agreement on other kinds of items. And so I think that's part of the reason, although there is help in the rescue packages for homeowners and for renters, and not all of the help that I would find desirable, but there is help for both groups.
Outstanding answers. Such great resources. Dr. Maya, you had something that you wanted to share.
Yes, I think someone was asking about zip code specific, like looking at specifically what zip codes have the lowest rates or need vaccines. Um, I know on the south side that's 60636, 60621, and this is from the City of Chicago data portal. 60636, 60621, 60637, 60649. In addition to that, 60633 and hold on, and then west 60644, 60624, 60612, 60607, 60642, and then headed north towards like Evanston, we have 60631, and 60646 and 60656. So those are like south, deep south, southwest, and north side areas with the lowest rates of vaccines. Here, let me copy into the chat. I don't know how to put it in the Facebook because I'm not that skilled on the but I can put it in the comments. Oh, look what I learned today. If I go from private to comment, but now I don't know how to put the thing there. I'll put it in private chat. Somebody else can put it in the comments. Sorry. There you go. And that's the data from the city of Chicago.
Okay.
The lowest income communities in the city,
Yep.
which also become the lowest formally educated communities as well in the city. So all of those factors go together and are combined and result in the lowest performance of individuals taking advantage of the vaccination resources.
Hmm.
So it just points out that we need to put more focus in some communities than in others. And the most focus should go to the communities of greatest need.
Absolutely.
All right, all right. So, this is going to be our last question for the evening because it is that time, and I know you guys hate to hear me say that. Yeah, it is that time. But of course, we'll be back next Monday. And remember to send your questions, inbox them, or email them to me. As you can see, we just paste and copy them, and we begin to grab your questions. We always try to grab at least the first 10 questions every Monday night. So just want to remind you guys to send your questions, share, 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 as you always do. We love you being here, and we understand as we share with you that health is true wealth. Really quick for that last question is Dr. Pete, Dr. Maya, and Dr. Michael McGee can actually tell everyone if you need a booster or a vaccine, where can you get it? Dr. Pete,
Wait, I'm sorry. Say it again.
if you need a vaccine or if you need a booster, where can you get it?
Oh, where? You can come. Coman is doing them. Near North is doing them. Walgreens is doing them. I do know that if you have to have a pre-existing condition, or older than 65, right now, if you call Walgreens, they want to know. They're not going to confirm that you have asthma or diabetes or heart failure, but if you say you have one of those, they're going to schedule your appointment for you. Or you can just come to Near North, or Maya. Is a Howard Brown doing them too?
Yep. Howard Brown, we have 10 locations citywide. And south, one most south, some Humble Park area, and then some north side. What we've seen successfully for people, here it is. Walgreens usually has, if you go online, you can find a link to schedule your vaccination. Here is the thing: if you are not getting your first dose, please either have your card or know which vaccine you got, because it's hard to give a second dose or right now until there's a mix and match. The booster, if we don't know or we don't have a record of which one you got. The other thing, if you, oh, I'm sorry, Dr. McGee is going to talk about where, and then I want to double back and talk about iCare, the state registry, how you can go on. Now anyone can go on and look up your vaccine.
Nice.
So stop telling people that you've been vaccinated when everybody can sit right in front of the computer and look it up and see that you have not. So stop doing that. I checked today. You know who you are. Stop doing that because you're not listed in there. Dr. McGee, where can you get vaccinated?
I think they've already given most of the places, and almost any healthcare organization is doing it. But another source would be right there in Hyde Park at 1301 East 47th Street, which is Premier Urgent Care, which is where we are. Also, people who are high risk in terms of exposure, who are in the medical field, can get boosters at any age too, as well.
Great information. And I'm going to say the next person can tell us where you can get a vaccine. That would be Representative Davis, because I know in his head, he's trying to figure out how we're going to pull together our consortium of African American doctors again and do another mass vaccine. I can see that on his forehead right now. I know he's thinking that out. So I've already been planning it because I know it's coming. So just want to let you know that. And Mike, I want to put you on your toes to let you know that you are now going to be a part of that vaccine when we do it. So there we go. Mike, you got an announcement for us this evening?
Oh yeah. So we're doing, I'm sure you guys know violence is rampant. We just had two senseless killings at Grambling State, all HBCU homecoming. Somebody got killed on campus and other people got shot. And the week before, somebody got killed near campus, at HBCUs. And it just goes to show you, it's not just in the hood. It's not just in certain neighborhoods. It's omnipotent. It's all everywhere now. And so we're doing 100 Black Men of America are doing a 12-city contest called Sleeves Up, Violence Out. And basically that contest is to encourage youth to get their vaccine if they're over 12. Also donate blood if they're over 16, because there's a national shortage of blood products. And then, of course, prevent violence is always on our minds. And so they can submit a video basically discussing any of these topics, doing rap, spoken word, dance, gospel, whatever, up until November 6th. And they can go to 100blackmen.org to submit their video. And then we're going to announce the winners on November 13th at our Health and Wellness Expo that's virtual here in Chicago. And one of the speakers is going to be our very own Congressman Danny Davis, who's going to close out the session with some words. But we're having a youth track and an adult track, and we're going to be discussing mental health, social emotional learning, the dangers of vaping, marijuana, as well as violence prevention. And then we're going to do a quick topics on health careers for our youth. So we encourage all youth to join 100 Black Men of America, 100blackmen.org, to hear the winners and to see this expo that's going to be virtual on November 13th, starting at 9 o'clock. You will hear more about it. Thank you.
All right, that flyer is posted on our social media with all the great prizes and everything that's going on. And we also have some partners in the Chicago Police Department who is spreading that word, who's going to be sharing to get those youth out to be a part of this wonderful, wonderful program. As we always say, your thoughts until next Monday. Dr. Graham, your thoughts until next Monday.
Well, thank you, Nikki. I'm still going back to the Ron Hubbard question, and I don't know a whole lot about Ron Hubbard, but if they're up to me, there are three things I kind of try and look at. And one is I look at the educational background. If there's a military career, I'd look at that. And I'd like to see if there's any trouble with the law. And if I find problems in any of those areas, I think I'll be looking elsewhere. So that's my about for next week.
Outstanding. And as the Congressman had asked, we did share with the young lady who sent the question. We asked her to give us a little more feedback on it. So I think she's going to give us some more feedback for next Monday and some additional thoughts. Dr. James Miller, your thoughts until next Monday. You're muted, Dr. Miller.
Our community still need healing, and healing is a multifaceted process. It's healing with it's communicating with one another. It's caring about one another. It's cooperating with one another. It's pooling of resources for the good of the community. And so, as I've been, we did a men's conference, and this conference really was centered around coming together for the good of the whole community, and men standing up and leading in a direction that is going to change the things that are happening to us that are negatively impacting the community to things that are more positively impacting the community. And that's what it takes to heal. It's going to take us, every good-hearted, good-minded, good-intended person, to start to having that kind of input. And as part of the discussion, Congressman Davis talked this evening about where need is. Need is we need to put the resources where the most vulnerable situation, because as we talk about a chain is only going to be as strong as its weakest link. And so when when the chains break it, then it becomes like it's not useful in terms of being able to accomplish its purpose. So the point that I'm trying to make is that as a community, we need to come together. We need to strengthen each other, strengthening the things that are helping the community to heal, because my goodness, a lot of healing is needed in so many areas, and we have to do something about it. And it's not all in pills; it's in deeds. It's in being courteous, being kind, being caring, and being concerned about each other. And that's my till next week.
All right, Bishop. We have to be concerned about each other. That is so, so important. So, Dr. Pete, your thoughts until next Monday.
Yeah. So I was in the gym this morning, and one of my frat brothers that I work out with, he's a Grambling alum, and he told me about that incident that happened. And so I go back to, I think this generation, there's been a disconnect, and I think to the extent that we can, the work that Dr. McGee is doing with the 100 Black Men, Alphas, Kappas, we got to become more present. We got to be present. We have to bridge the gap, right? And I think what creates, or what aids in this gap is this technology, right? Because students can be so into their phones that they have no desire for physical contact. And I know for me, I remember being in the presence of men, right? And those men demanded accountability from me, right? There was not any kind of behavior was not going to go. And these are not just my fathers. These were neighbors. These were football coaches. These were, mentors. And so I think, that we have to be more present. And the other day I was grabbing some coffee. I had my scrubs on, and something told me, sit outside. And the number of kids that was walking by from Kenwood and was just looking at me and looking and like, what is that guy? Like, what is he? Like, and I think, we need to do that more. Dr. Maya and Dr. James Miller and Dr. Graham, Dr. McGee, we need to be present so that these kids can see what you might be. But if you take your life too frivolously, you have to be careful with this diamond that you have, right? And our kids need to see themselves as diamonds, right? And somebody saw a diamond in me. Somebody saw a diamond in us. We didn't get here by ourselves, I promise you. But again, kudos to Dr. McGee and the work he's doing with the 100 Black Men. And I just think we need to be more present. And that goes for all of our audience. Our kids need us in order to make better decisions.
Outstanding, my brother. Outstanding. Dr. McGee, Mike, you're until next Monday.
I'll just say basically 2 words, altruism and ownership. I think we can't wait for the government to help us with this number one public health problem, which is violence. We have to take ownership as a race, as an entity. We got to come together. Every Black physician to Black nurse, to every HBCU, to every Divine Nine, to every church should all be for the purpose of saving our youth. And we all got to show that altruistic attitude and care and concern for each other to make it happen. And so I think that's where we fall. We all are in our own little vacuums doing our own little thing, but we got to do it all together to have more of a implicit role and to really see some accomplishments. Because this should be happening. We shouldn't be seeing people going to college and dying. It happened at Spelman 2 years ago, not Spelman, but Morris Brown and Clark, where they had a shootout, and 4 kids got shot, and 1 kid actually held pressure and stopped the bleeding of a child who would have died. And we're seeing it at kids getting out of school, and you got gunmen opening up, shooting a security guard, and 14-year-old kids getting shot. This kind of stuff is just, there's no place for it. There's no code right now. Cats are shooting at will. They got guns. People are angry. People pissed. People have lost people. People have mental health issues. People are broke. It's just a huge problem that at some point we all got to come together and stand up and say, hey, we tired of it. We're not waiting for the government. We're going to try to do something ourselves. And that's a big problem. So got to start somewhere.
That's right. We have to start somewhere. Praise reports. Dr. Tony Hampton is doing better, and he'll probably meet us back here on next Monday. And our even bigger praise report is Dr. Terry Mason is better and coming home. He just says he feels a little tired, but he is better, and he will be home on tomorrow. So yes, praise report for Dr. Terry Mason. You know, Dr. 100, I always got you. I heard that little comment when Dr. P says he's only a couple years older than you, but I know better, so I saved the baby for last. Go right ahead, Dr. Buck.
Thank you. Thank you, best friend. What I was going to do is take time to send thanks for our Babas, Professor Black, General Powell, who made their transition, but also take time to send complete healing energy to Dr. Tony and Dr. Mason, Dr. Hampton, Dr. Mason, and just give those moments to just focus 3 seconds and just send thanks to our ancestors and also send healing energy to our kings we have with us now. So let's just take that time. Amen. Ashe. Yeah.
Amen. As we remind you all, those 3 things that Dr. P talked about earlier, to wear your mask, wash your hands, and use your distance, stay your distance, make sure that you do all those things. Join us right back here, same that time, same that station on next Monday night. And as always, we'll have our final closing words from the man who makes all of this possible, our very own U.S. representative of the Illinois 7th Congressional District, one who reminds us each and every day that true wealth is health. That's our very own Congressman Danny K. Davis.
Well, let me just thank all of our doctors. You know, it's so inspirational to hear the comments and to absorb some of the knowledge. And yet, we know that we have not reached what is called herd status by any stretch of imagination. And all of us have to never let up. We have to keep pressing forward. I think of one of the songs that we sing at my church. It says, I'm pressing on, Lord. I am freedom bound. Plant my feet on higher ground.
Eba.
Meaning that no matter what it is that we may have done, we're only halfway to yonder shore. And so we just have to keep pressing. I want to thank certainly Dr. Miller and his church, the Rising Sun Missionary Baptist Church, for this great focus they are putting on African American males. And of course, the 100 Black men. You know, Grambling University was the closest school to where I grew up that I could have gone to, even though I grew up in the southeast corner of Arkansas. It was very close to Louisiana, and that was the closest school that I could have gone to in terms of college. Of course, I would have had to pay an out-of-state fee, which I didn't have. So I chose to stay in Arkansas and not go to Louisiana. But I've always been a big fan of Grambling. Coach Eddie Robinson was an absolute hero for all of us who knew anything about athletics, and especially if we knew anything about football. We actually beat Grambling one year, 76, and the president of our school gave us a day off because we had defeated Grambling. We didn't have to go to class that Monday. And so it saddens me to no end to know the kind of violence that has taken place at that historically Black college and university. But we just have to keep pressing, and we have to do as much work with boys. I mean, everybody need all the work that we can do, but we've got to provide more opportunities for young boys growing up to have certain kinds of experiences. And that's why we've been doing the State of the African American Male for several years. We've taken it across the country. We've had people like Ozzie Davis and Ruby Dee and Minister Farrakhan and every known type that you could have having conversations, and yet the need continues to exist. And one of the things we really need is some more public resources for parenting and to create opportunities for parenting programs, because raising children is not quite like it used to be. It is tougher. My mom and daddy used to keep us intimidated so they could keep us in line, and they did all right. Doesn't work quite that way now. So thanks to all of you for keeping hope alive and making sure that help is available. And until next week, I'm going to pray an extra prayer for Dr. Terry Mason, and we look forward to seeing all of you then. Thank you so much, and have a great evening, and let's get it on. I'm going to get my booster shot tomorrow.
Exactly.
All right.
Take care, guys.
Okay.
Good night.
See you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.